can utilize our own faculty and our former faculty. It's very nice to have Myrene Taylor back with us tonight. She graduated in 1975. She was the first full-time female on the faculty of the College of Architecture and Planning. At the moment, she's working in South Bend for Lim Kolozinski Associates, and she says she's doing lots of banks. The thing that she's here to tell us about tonight, though, is her experience as one of the first architects in the schools, which was a program of the National Endowment for the Arts that began 2 years ago, and it was the first in Indiana and the first of 20 in this country. She tells me that today they're doing the interviews for a job down in Terre Haute as an architect in the schools, and when the selection committee from the Indiana Arts Committee looked at them last week, we had two applicants, and they both were College of Architecture and Planning, Ball State University graduates. So we've looked forward for a long time to hearing about this program from Myrene, and without further ado, we'll turn it over to her. Myrene Taylor. Oops, is that going to? Yeah, I'm being very careful. Here we go.
Now everybody can hear me. I can hear. Good. Okay. Whenever. Okay, without further ado, since we started a little bit late today, and I heard that everybody was getting out of here in a week or two, and you're all busy. Okay, well, we're going to start, Norm. The program I'm in, and have been in for the last 2 years, is called the Architects in Schools program. And it is funded by a National Endowment for the Fine Arts and the Indiana Arts Commission. We went through an interviewing process. I think there were about 3 architects in Indiana that interviewed for the job in Indiana. There's about, I think, 20 to 30 people in the nation now working on the program, and they have all enjoyed it with the conferences that we've been going to. We've been finding out that we are making some inroads in helping people understand what architects are about. Okay, let's see. What it's about is children. That's the main goal, is to help them realize that they have some say about their environment. We call it the built environment, so that takes into account architecture, landscape architecture, planning, any aspect that would involve the places and spaces that they are involved in every day. This project here was really the first thing I ever did. I was invited into the Howard County Northwestern School Corporation, and they asked me to go into the high school. One thing I do is talk a lot. The teachers weren't ready for me at all. They had no idea what I was about. So I got to talking with art teachers, people that might have an understanding of what we do, and got involved first in an elementary school, which was like across the street. What they did in this particular project was develop a creature habitat. And I like to start them off with the thinking process that we use, which is what people need, what will make them happy, what colors will they like, and then to develop that, and we even had to, of course, make our own creatures in this particular project. Some got very architectural, and some did not. These were done by, I believe, 5th graders. Some got quite involved in, the design of the interiors. One thing I found out is little children tend to not put roofs on things, or they put a roof on it and forget the interior of it altogether. Some are nothing but, folded pieces of paper with string on them. But as long as they got involved, and they could explain to you why they did it, and that was most important to me. I did find out that in this particular school corporation that art is a vital subject, and the art teachers in elementary and high school do develop a curriculum which involves color, line, space. So it was real easy for me to go into these particular classes and work with the children. I also felt that I wouldn't have not a lot of impact in these particular classes because the teachers were doing such a good job. So I tried to then go into the rest of the curriculum and become more of a resource person to other teachers within the school system. One thing that through our conferences, which we've had in Philadelphia, Quincy, Illinois, we have found out that every architect within his school system has developed it differently, according to his school's needs. Like one architect he went into a school that was going to be torn down, or the students were going to leave it the next year, and it had been in existence for about 5 years. So to appease the parents, the school board had given the school a lot of money, and they developed hands-on projects where they made platforms which would be moved to this older school that they were taking all the children back to. There are some people in New York that develop hands-on projects where they take a classroom and make a lounge out of it. For instance, there was one guy in I believe in New York, who got involved in exceptionally bright children, and they developed projects involving inflatable structures, where they would calculate the volume of air in relation to like boats that are inverted, and it got quite I never get that, quite complicated. Needless to say. Okay, this was another project I did when I was involved in the elementary school, and it was just having children remember the places that they live in now. And I would get up to the board to show them I'm just a normal type person and start drawing like my walk from school to home. And I really got them when they found out I lived near a brewery, because they were all beer can collectors at the time. So I had them in my hand. So they would start developing, little scenarios, which would tell me about, the colors of their houses or their favorite places, and why it was their favorite place or why it was not their favorite place. And like the child above just didn't like thunderstorms and being in the house, I guess, by him or herself. They're almost works of art. You can see where one girl liked her bedroom and started to really tell me about the colors and the objects within her room. The one underneath liked the outdoors because she was into acrobats. That says acrobatics. There. These were exceptional drawings. One of a forest, where a child liked to walk. Oh, we are in a rural district. All the children have to be bused in. And cities, to a lot of these children, are virtually unknown. And when we were being trained in Philadelphia, cities were emphasized. So I walked in with all these, pat little programs, and none of them worked. So I had to come up with all this other things that would fit into a country. So they would develop how their yards looked in elevation or plan at the same time. Then we started to develop their walk to school, which is on a bus. What do you see on the bus on the way to school? Like I said, my walk was like 9 blocks, and that was my neighborhood. Their neighborhoods could be like 2 miles, in diameter, or 10 miles in diameter, whatever. And our school system is in a county that is 20 miles wide, and it goes from one side of US 31 to the other side, and it's kind of interesting. So they started developing these road systems, and their little symbols to show the things that they saw, cornfields, friends' houses, or whatever, and to color them. Some of them live in like suburbs with shopping centers nearby, while some virtually live out really in the middle of like a cornfield, and they are farmers. They would start to tell me about, the roads, the fact that it had a marking down the middle of it or whatever. I have to claim this one. I believe this particular one here has a curve in the road, and I would ask the students, to explain to me what they had drawn. And I said, "Oh, is there a curve in the road there?" And they go, "Oh, no, that's a hill." So they start to show me on a 2-dimensional surface what it actually looks like in 3-dimension. And then we would get out different maps. I would bring in like the map of the city of Kokomo and show them how, quote, professionals do it. I always enjoy looking at their drawings. Some are really involved. Some of them show you how complicated the areas that they do live in can be, and the fact that they can find their way out of there is amazing. They'd start to notice that cows are in this one field all the time. It's rather enjoyable. So, after finishing there and like eating in the lounge with the teachers at noon, really just getting to know them, I went back to the high school. So this is the high school. I tried to take a picture of it to show you the whole thing, and I can't. There's just no one picture that'll do it. It's 3 sections of building built on from 1916 all the way up to the late 60s. And behind all this is a new building being built once again. This is the junior high school and senior high school, and that's the entrance to the junior high school. So the first thing I got into the art class there, and we would do a project. I believe this was another habitat type project. And I just sometimes try to give them free rein. I believe I did in this one, and though I got a product out of them, it was more amazing for me to watch the students that worked on this project. The student that did this was like classified as a slow learner. I believe it was a girl. All the students wouldn't really talk with her, and they were quite amazed at what she came up with. In fact, she took this home and finished it and brought it back. And the precision of it, in fact, a lot of the art students that I had are the ones that don't do well in science. They're not in physics classes. They're not even in some industrial arts classes. They're just there to really get them through high school. You can start to see where we tried to work, with topography and different materials. So the one back there was styrofoam. A lot of the students were students that don't want to do anything. We get those. And this was one of them. And to be frank with him, we explained to him how well he succeeded in showing shape, color, form in the particular project. And he was kind of amazed at himself by the time he finished it. Some of them do get strange, but they did enjoy doing them. Tried to get them to use, to get away from boxes. Right. This was supposed to be a habitat where they could imagine themselves living, I think, in the 20th century. Some, of course, as you can see, were right out of the 40s and 50s and whatever. Try to use different materials just found around the art room. And this was a mobile. So she would hang that, from a lamp or whatever. But it is a house to live in. Some of them and I really don't get into like architectural models. I really try to stay away from that, which was something most of the art teachers or high school teachers didn't understand about me. I didn't want to make little architects out of them at all. This one, I just love this project. Another slow learner. This kid can't read. He's in high school. In fact, he didn't graduate last year. They wouldn't let him graduate, so he just left. I believe he was about 18. And he conceived this project, which was the same as the others now, on that crayon drawing at the top. And they were supposed to have drawn them up. He was the only one that drew it up for me. And he understood his house. And the art teacher and I didn't understand what he was doing at all. We just let him go. And he came up with that. And it was, I mean, you can understand, the kid really understood space. And I think for me, the most important thing I learned was the fact that these students have a kind of an innate feeling for space that you can't really teach at all. This child just had it. This really was an exceptional student, and he really got involved in his particular habitat. In fact, he was going to become, I believe, an industrial designer when he got out. Another, as I was doing these, I was trying to remember the names of these projects yesterday as I was putting slides in. I believe this was just to create a space, in the hallway that students would have to go through, walk under, and we did have our failures. This was really the only one that came out of there, and it was designed by a girl. And you would look on the inside of the top of it, where you could see that light blue thing. Okay, and that's what it looked like on the inside. It was kind of a landscape thing. Well, I thought it was very successful. What? One upside down. Another thing that I would do, I finally got into some classes, sociology classes, and we started to develop maps which showed monuments, nodes, and it became more architectural. But it had been, for me, the success of it was to get into the class. This professor or teacher requires no theme papers, no reports, no projects, nothing. And that was the first thing that had ever been done in one of his classes. Another thing that I do get involved in somewhat, and they thought it was a misunderstanding when I went to the school system. They thought I was to be their architect. And it took a while to get away from that. So they had this courtyard, which actually you saw in the first picture, and they wanted to develop that. So I got in with the student council, and they had money, and we did these studies of sun shadows, etc., and tried to come up with a seating arrangement and a landscaping arrangement in this corner. Well, as it ends up, where that tree is right there on the lower left-hand side, that's about all that is getting done. And it has taken 2 years to get that far. And we have finally came up with using bell tiles, and they're filling those up with concrete. But when you have, students are bussed in, they have no time, so we drag them out of study halls. And the art teacher has now taken it upon himself to finish the project, and we have a few mounds and such. This was another one that was started last year, and at the end of the year, the industrial art teacher left, like 2 weeks before school, and he just left. And I couldn't really get it going so soon. So I got back this year, and I was there one day, and I heard that either we get it done or I was going to be under it. So within a week, we were out there digging away, and the administration building is right to our left. And in one day, the guys had it designed in the industrial arts class. So they got out there and started to put in their little tables, and I'm always amazed at how long it takes to do these projects. You have to teach them how to square something up, and when you've got 20 students that you have to teach that to, you tear apart a lot of things. And the concrete blocks they had made the year before, so we finally got to use them, ordered the brick, and it's being used. So that was one thing. Another project that I got involved with is the fact that they dug a pond on the property. And that had to do with their outdoor environment program. So they asked me to go in and put a fence around it. So I finally talked them into landscaping part of it, putting in some mounds. I don't have any pictures of this. And then I taught a surveying class, and we went out there and laid out the stakes, which were taken up every night. So that took about a month to lay out the fence. And last I heard, the pond is filled and the fence is almost up. Another project in class, now I started to get into the curriculum. I wanted to use their curriculum, enhance it, and make it more interesting and show them how actually English can become a topic and involve it with architecture as well as home ec class, okay? I went in and virtually taught the whole class. Oh, by the way, I'm only there 2.5 days a week. It's only a half-time job. So I would go in there and start with chapter 1, because that was the way the teacher wanted it, and really just kept adding to the chapters, you know, and do the chapters that she was scared of, which was, you know, the technical part of it. Then, as we went through the history of architecture, American architecture, in about 3 days, in 40-minute sessions, which was real fun. But we made it. They would then have a project where they would have to develop a house for themselves. And I would give them sheets of paper which they had to write, like, get away from the use of terms living room, kitchen. They would have to describe the areas they were going to live in, which was like food preparation, you know, communication area. Really try to get them to think about the way they live. And I taught this course, I taught it twice. And last time we did it, they were supposed to end up with a house. She handed them grid paper, and which kind of threw me. So this year I said, oh, let's get away from the squares and trying to figure out stairs and how they fit into a house and get into the outside of it, get them to use a little bit more of their imagination. So we took the old flour, salt, water trick and came up with these little models. And this took them close to 3 weeks. And these were all juniors, sophomores and juniors in high school. Some really became elaborate. You could tell, you know, the ones that really had a good imagination. And these were built upon their bubble diagrams, which was placed on a site which I had given them. And we talked about contours and topography, water runoff, all that kind of stuff. Also, I tried to teach them to become good consumers, right? These girls are going to go out and get apartments, get married, whatever, buy a house, rent a house, build a new house, whatever. And there's certain things they do have to know so they don't get hoodwinked. Okay, this is one I stole from Ball State, folks, but it works. Mr. Ping Project. They loved it. The whole school got involved in this one. It was one of the first projects that I gave that other classes wanted to participate in. Most of the time, you know, they just look at it, oh, another project, and they go by. But these things were huge. You know, they're like 2-foot cubes, and they take up half the art room, and these kids are playing with the ping pong balls. You know, we didn't get involved in the intricacies that you folks do here. We just wanted them to get it built. We talked about, you know, highlights, what does this ping pong ball see? And the art teacher was really concerned with the form of it. And he would stress that, and I would try to stress the mechanics. They did have to run the thing through for 15 seconds. That was a definite requirement. That was it, you know. That we tried to get them to build, you know, a model of it. And sometimes that was as far as they would get. This was, you know, of course, the most elaborate. He was a senior in high school, very intelligent guy, and very meticulous. In fact, we took this to a conference, and it got bounced around. He really wasn't too pleased with us. But it worked. I would say it really wasn't the most exciting, but as far as craftsman goes, it was one of the best. Another student working on her project. Hers is a simple ramp. She was another girl that can't read, won't make it through it all. This was another girl's project, involved elevators and such. This one was strange. We also told them they had to have highlights, and this girl got involved with kind of a lot of sparkle things. And in the end, I didn't tell her to do this, but she had the ball end up in water, which I think is similar to what some guy did when I did the project in school. The best thing about this project was the fact the art teacher took it beyond the Mr. Ping project, which is I think the best example of where I wanted some of my projects to go. They then had to develop a logo for their project as if they were going to sell it as a toy, which is on the right-hand side. And after they developed that, they analyzed their project with overlays and then developed a silk screen showing the concept behind it. So that took the entire semester to do that. So that was really getting involved in his curriculum and trying to take an idea further. I thought some of them turned out well. For what art teachers have to deal with, the materials, I think the school does well. We go out and look for a lot of things. That's nothing but like flour sack, whatever. Okay, this project here was in an English class, and we discussed words. And I told them, they all were given a word pertaining to architecture. And I wanted them to describe the word to a person that had no idea what it meant. They could be blind, they could be from another country, or just, know the English language but not know the word. And so this was some of the projects they came up with. These were, I believe, juniors in high school. It was a vocabulary class. Another class that I did get involved in was a journalism class. And I started out in that one by looking through their journalism book, which told the organization of a newspaper, which was a typical pyramid thing. And I went through it and explained to them that for John Doe to see the president, he had to go through 20 people, to explain to them how these pyramid things really don't work. And in that particular class, we developed a whole semester's work from that beginning, and they would go down to the Kokomo Tribune, and they finally discussed the different departments with the people, analyzed them, and designed a whole new Kokomo Tribune building. That one seemed to work out really well. I did that because he actually got involved in the individual letters showing environment. I don't know how well you can see that. This one says industrialization. I thought that was quite good. I must admit, you do have to pull these projects out of high school students. It is amazing. I mean, that was maybe a class of 30, and that was all I got. And they just, it didn't matter. They would just flunk it. They knew they'd get through the class somehow. Another art project was to discuss form. And we talked about forms and what they meant. So a quickie, I think this took 2 days or something. And they were each given a word, and they were to take that word and describe it in a form. And also the color was supposed to have something to do with it. Then I got involved in a junior high school class, which it became more elaborate, where we talked about words again, and not telling them where I was going. Like, for instance, this girl had the word stuffy. Gave them white paper, and I said, now make a three-dimensional form showing stuffy. And it took them about 2 weeks to come up with this part of it. Then I said, now let's add color, to show that word and to show what it means. this was powerful. Okay, so the form and the colors start to depict what's going on a little bit better. I don't remember what the word was, but if you can see the two little men up there, we discussed scale. Okay, what happens if, the people are this high, half an inch, or what if they're 4 foot high? What does that object become? And keep telling them, remember this comes from a word. You started out with only one word, and you came up with this whole space. And this, I believe, was like sophistication or something. And this girl was really embarrassed that she came up with this. And it was, one of the best ones that we got. Then we took all these little projects, and we built a city out of them. And you could see how sophistication became an art museum. Powerful became county, courthouses, things like that, so that they could understand that, their environment can start from nothing but a mere idea, small concept. And we would do quick projects to kind of let the school know we were there. So all we did was take tissue paper and we taped it underneath the panels on the ceiling. And amazingly enough, none got tore down. And that's what we were told, that all be torn down. And it was only up about 3 days because they wouldn't let us keep it up very long. But as we were putting it up, students were asking students, why are you doing this? But it got everybody's eyes off the floor. And then we kind of analyzed what we did and talked about the comments and things like that. As you can see, it's, a typical school, terrazzo floor, brick, and not much color, hard surfaces, things like that. Another thing the artists were asked to do last year was to go to the Children's Museum in Indianapolis and give a demonstration. So I developed this big Tinker Toy set, which I've used in art classes and elementary schools, classes and whatever, and all it is dowel rods and some, holes and 2x4s and sheets with some rubber hosing on top. And a friend of mine in Illinois gave me some cards from the university there, and to get students to, they're really inhibited, it's amazing. So to get them started, I would give these cards which say, create a place for an elephant who likes to hug. So they would create this place for this elephant, or sometimes it would say, create a place for a mouse, that likes to do trapeze things. But you start to study scale or whatever. In art classes, we would have them build things, and then we would draw them, and we'd be drawing positive and negative spaces. And the art teacher, amazingly enough, wanted to build one for every school in the system. Okay, this is an elementary school. Finally got to the elementaries. And this is what it looks like. It's not the fluorescent light bulbs, it's, the green, and the other one is yellow. They're the same type of school. So I would start working with first graders. And this was a blind walk, which would take 3 or 4 days to get them to get over their silliness and to get into the project. And I was really surprised that this girl was helping this other one feel water, that they got that involved in the project. Then they actually drew how their room felt, and the teacher, made a bulletin board, and they were really proud of it. Then we started to take these words that they were learning, smooth, soft, skinny, slippery, etc. And most of them were new words to them, and we learned how to spell them and tried to use them on our drawings. Another classroom wanted to develop a new arrangement. They were really cramped, and so we got into room improvements where they measured everything, the floor, the chairs, all the tables. We actually threw out a couple tables, and they got down to the scale model where they, just pushed paper around, and they actually did it when I wasn't there, so I was rather proud of that. About a month later, we had a snowstorm, and the pipes broke, and everything in the room was ruined, the floors, the ceilings and stuff, it all just caved in. So I didn't get any pictures of it after they'd finished it. I'd also gone into a 6th grade class, and she didn't know, she just wanted me to get involved in mathematics. So we started out by discussing different shapes and how forces affect different shapes. And she was amazed that we could make shapes so easily, so quickly. And I would hold a circle and, stick my finger on it and say what is happening to this circle or the triangle or the square. Of course, we found out, that triangles were the most stable, and they started building these huge bridges, and they also started to reinforce the circles and the squares and such. And I had started out by telling them that we are going to build a bridge between 2 desks, and it's going to hold a certain amount of weight. And they didn't believe that. So we went through that whole exercise with the triangles. And then we started, after that, with the newspapers. I remember somebody built a bridge in a half an hour or 15 minutes, something like that. They had this big wad of paper, and they go, see, this works. So the teacher immediately said, every piece of paper you use costs $5,000. So she introduced that money factor into it. So they started building their bridge. All they knew about was a triangle. We didn't tell them anything. They could do whatever they wanted. They were in groups. And some of them got quite elaborate. We talked about bridges and rocker joints. So one side was taped down to one of the desks, and the other side had to move, or it couldn't be taped down. And they started coming up with these projects. That was a neat one. That one was really nice. They were really reinforcing it both ways. And then we started to load them with books, okay? By this time, the principal of the school is coming in, and somebody, that had finished early, and it's nice to see this excitement. They would start loading them, and everybody would stop and watch them get higher and higher. And they loaded all of them to the point of collapse. And they were really amazed at how many books and the balance factor and how that affected it, which they hadn't thought of before. Oh, disappointment. Now watch this one. That one never did collapse, and that one, some of them were complete failures. 2 books, bam, was over. She didn't. Okay, another 7th grade project that I worked on was nothing but measurement. I do a lot with measurement, teach metrics and things. I made these little 2-inch squares, handed them 10, told them to put it on a cardboard and to measure the room with these 10 squares. They had to put it on some graph paper, and I don't know, we must have had 8 groups, so we had 2 groups measuring the floor and 2 on each wall. And the amazing thing with this project was the fact that they realized, that craftsmanship counted in their measuring tool. They would be working together, and then they would compare a wall with the wall of another group and find out that the walls didn't match. So they'd have to go big discussions on who had made the mistake. And finally, they ended up with this very simple model. I bet I can't remember, it must have taken over a month, to work on it. I got just about a couple more slides. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some of the other projects that the architects get involved in. So you can see I really I emphasize getting into the curriculum, and that was the job that is going to be in Terre Haute is involved with the curriculum itself. And mine was, I guess, kind of unique in that I did this. They wanted us to get really into the hands-on projects but we didn't have the money. It wasn't until this year that I actually got money for materials, like magic markers, paper, and such like that. I used to steal it from the art teachers, and they were very nice about it, but I was beginning to feel guilty about it.